Beyond humanity, the world has a lot of completely true and not at all fictional monsters. Not at all personified representations of humanity's evil, and so thus humans are worse than all those monsters combined? Certainly not. The grand old Loch Ness Monster would be the aquarium dream. The world has grown bored of basic Nemo fish and bland killer monster great white sharks with 3 rows of teeth. Completely boring. But the Loch Ness is the ultimate aquarium exhibit. Think of the money you'd be rolling in. You'd have a minor version of Jurassic World, just set to have millions of people wanting to see the only example of dinosaurs left. But to be fair, it would be pretty boring only having one dinosaur at all. Nothing is special for long if it's the only example. For example, look at famous films that rely on having some sort of unique creature, like Jurassic World or Jaws. Then those movies make vastly underperforming sequels because, as I said, the feeling of something being one of a kind is lost when it's a damn sequel. I'd just imagine how you would market the Loch Ness Monster. In modern culture, people are thankfully realizing the importance of a myth's origins and the culture behind it, yet many people drastically fail at trying to make it work. So, in an attempt to respect Scottish culture, I know some fools would turn the Loch Ness into a freaking kilt-wearing dinosaur. To be fair, I would absolutely pay to see that. You know what else I would pay to see that is probably the result of poor execution of exhibition of Scottish culture? Bagpipes. The Loch Ness Monster with gigantic bagpipes would be one hell of a YouTube thumbnail clickbait opportunity. You know how every picture of the Loch Ness Monster is just a bunch of driftwood? Well, what if that's how it perfectly blends in with the environment, like the weeping angels from Doctor Who turn to stone when looked at? The Loch Ness Monster could be something that turns to wood when looked at. That's right, driftwood is the monster. If the Loch Ness really does exist, why is it only in Loch Ness? It's not that big of a lake. A massive creature like that would most likely live in the ocean. Maybe the Loch Ness is just social distancing like everyone else. That's why they're just in one lake. You know what Medusa could do if she lived in the modern era? She could open a sculpture museum. She would be able to craft $1,000,000 sculptures in just one moment, and all it would cost is one tiny little death of a human life, you know, nothing. Although, one thing to ask is, could she turn them back? It would be amazingly useful to paralyze someone temporarily. If you could have statues changing stance by unfreezing them and then putting them back in an instant. Now, if statuettes are her best possible option, then arguably the worst thing for her to do would be a job in a fashion week. Lady Medusa taking photo shoots and ending up on the cover of Vogue. Interesting to think about, would a picture of Medusa turn someone to stone if they looked at it? Would a video end up killing people like The Ring? A fashion model Medusa would, pun intended, be a killer show. Just see a Gorgon walking down a catwalk, stunning, flashing a little pose, encapsulate, then the kind of industry-setting murder that only a starlet could achieve. On the topic of nothing to do with that, does she have to feed the snakes? Do they share her stomach, or did they have little tiny stomachs in her head that would look like tumors on an X-ray? Do they have taste buds? Does she taste mice every time she feeds them? Another good query is, are all of her hairs snakes? If that's the case, then would a male Medusa have a snake beard? Snakes around the mouth? Would nerdy Gorgons have neck snakes? Would hipsters have snake mustaches? There's a complex dilemma to the idea of hair being living beings. Haircuts would be the equivalent of murder, and kind of shaving or trimming would be the elimination of life, only to get replaced by a different being destined to be slaughtered. Think about that next time you shave. Then, speaking of hairs, there's the big guy. The most mystical large hairy man excluding Michael Cera, of course, Bigfoot. The thing I never understood was his name. His feet aren't actually proportionally that big from the rest of him. He's just a big creature with normal-sized feet. You wouldn't call Godzilla Big Nose. I mean, yes, he has a big nose, but that's not an exclusive detail to his nose. How is there only one Bigfoot? There must be more. How could there be a species of something without it having a mother and maybe also a father? Unless it's government engineered, then why wouldn't they have made more? On the line of government engineered Sasquatches, why are people so obsessed with Bigfoot? Everyone's concocting some sort of conspiracy to explain the existence, or try and connect him with all these other conspiracies. How about we just leave Bigfoot alone? He's probably just wanting some time to himself. The poor guy's earned it. The guy already has to deal with the culturally appropriated human rendition of Sasquatches, Umbrella Academy's Luther. I feel like Bigfoot would have every right to be upset if he were to watch Umbrella Academy. Just taking his image and turning it into the worst character in the show, don't at me. What would Bigfoot do if he was forced into the real world? I think he would do the numbers on WWE. Granted, everything there is scripted, but it would be a delight to see Bigfoot wail on some of the more annoying wrestlers. If Bigfoot walks up in the WWE, it would be like Planet of the Apes gone sumo, which honestly does sound like a remake that Hollywood would make if they ran out of ideas, especially if it was just one Bigfoot that somehow took over the world. Planet of the Bigfoots being its own franchise would be a little stale, especially when it gets its own remakes, Planet of the Yetis. In fact, how related is he to the Yeti? Are they just entirely separate Sasquatch-like designed creatures? 'Cause we really ran out of ideas if they are. Speaking of running out of ideas, the monster with the least variation is probably Frankenstein, or Frankenstein's monster, or whatever you want to Lego your ego over. Zombies are just humans that are angry, but Frankenstein is just socially awkward, and to be fair, I do feel bad for him. His design is quite unoriginal though, since he is literally a mash of different body parts of different people. He's just a remake to end all remakes. And if you have other people merged together, why the bolts? Do they work like staples to connect the pieces? There are already staples all over the place. I guess they must work like electric conductors, but then why not take them out once the creature is already alive? You don't need to shock him anymore. Unless he's into that, I don't know. Not to mention that it's pretty crappy stitch work, that we can still see the stitches, supposedly years after the monsters come to life. Normally skin heals over stitches. Trust me, I know. I once tripped down a rotating set of stairs chin first, hitting myself on every step, and my chin was like an upside down blood volcano. So my chin is a bunch of stitches and you can't see them anymore. I think it's time to accept that his name is Frankenstein, not Frankenstein's monster. If he's Dr. Frankenstein's son, and Frankenstein is the last name, then the son aspect of his existence means that his name would be Frankenstein too, so shut up about it. Frankenstein is too long of a name as well, but I've never heard anybody call him Frank, Frankie, or Frankster. Frank has a bunch of name variations way better than Frankenstein. Plus, if the monster wants to be treated more human, then that's perfect. Humans have a tendency of giving themselves stupid nicknames. Next thing we know, he's gonna call himself Lil Frankenstein. A more important note is that he apparently looked normal in the book. So, what was the problem? Where did all the green skin stapled flat top bolt neck image come from? Please tell me it isn't a sex thing.